Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge with respect that here at UVic, we work and live, we study and create on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples and the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wassanish peoples whose historical relationships with this land continue to this day. I also want to extend a very, very special welcome to the teachers, staff, students from the Didadak Community School in Nitnat Lake who made the journey over the Malahat just to hear our special guest today. Welcome. Without further ado, let me introduce to you the author we are all here to see and hear. Eden Robinson was born on the same day as Edgar Allan Poe, Dolly Parton, and I just learned Joan McLeod, which she believes is not a coincidence. I don't know what to put the Joan McLeod on it. She grew up and lives in Kitimat Village in Haisla Territory on BC's Central Coast. She studied creative writing right here at UVic. I think Writing 100 was a little smaller, and graduated in 1992. She completed her MFA at UBC and published her first collection of short stories, Traplines, just a few years after. It won Britain's Winifred Holtby Memorial Prize. She released her first novel, Monkey Beach, in 2000, about a teenage girl growing up on the Haisla Reserve, to great acclaim. It was shortlisted for the Giller Prize, the Governor General's Literary Award, and won the Ethel Wilson Fiction Prize. And it is currently being made into a movie by a creative team led by filmmaker Loretta Saratotti. It's filming actually today, as we speak. Yeah. Her other credits include the novel Bloodsports in 2006 and a work of nonfiction called Sasquatch at Home, Traditional Protocols in Modern Storytelling. In 2016, Eden won the Writers' Trust Finley Engel Award, a prestigious honor that acknowledges the entire body of mid-career work of a major Canadian author. Her fifth novel, for sale out there, Son of a Trickster, confirmed Eden's reputation as one of our country's most daring and original writers. What began as a short story morphed into another award-worthy novel that reached virtually every best-of list in 2017. Son of a Trickster was again shortlisted for the Giller Prize, and jury members described it as, quote, a novel that shimmers with magic and vitality, featuring a compelling narrator somewhere between Holden Caulfield and Harry Potter. She is here today to launch book number 2 in the Trickster trilogy. I believe we are the first stop on the much anticipated Trickster Drift. And I've had the great pleasure of admiring Eden's creative work and career liftoff from a distance. Was a student at UVic a year ahead of me and already had a reputation for dark, funny prose and poetry, as well as her resonant laugh. The first reading I ever did as a young author, and actually Eden's first reading too, was at a student festival here in town at a subterranean bookstore, and Eden was the other author. Only one person showed up to hear us perform. And I'd blocked it out. Eden remembers that person only showed up to learn more about the program, to ask us questions, which might have been a disappointment, but then Eden began reading one of her early stories, and both me and the other audience member just fell enwrapped into the dark world and haunted characters created by Eden's vivid prose and storytelling voice. It felt like we were sitting around a campfire, listening to an epic poet tell an ancient ghost story, with the darkness around us held at bay by her words. We didn't want it to end. I still don't. I knew at that moment that the rest of the world was soon to discover a very special voice from a very special writer with very special stories to tell. I wasn't wrong. Please welcome the one, the only, Eden Robinson.
Oh, thank you. There's still some chairs down here if you guys want to. Oh, you got it? Okay. Yo, Stokwa, Eden Robinson, Nugwa. I'm Haisla and Haltek, and I live in my dad's territory on the Tsimotsa Reserve, Kitimat Village. And Tsimotsa means Snag Beach. No. To snag is powwow culture slang for to hook up. So I thought it would make like a great T-shirt or a nice name for a native soap opera. I started the Trickster series when my dad was still alive, and I told him that he had told me we get stories, the transforming raven, from when I was little to all the way up to when he passed. He loved Trickster stories, but even more, he loved Sasquatch stories. So when he read Son of a Trickster, he said he liked it, but he's very disappointed that I hadn't represented Sasquatch. His theory about why we didn't see Sasquatch anymore was that they had built a mall and they were too busy shopping to visit us anymore. And although he loved Sasquatch, he didn't like the Discovery series Finding Bigfoot, because he thought that was harassing the Sasquatches. But he said they'll never find him because they have Squatchbook. So they post on Squatchbook whenever a researcher or a TV team comes into their territory. So for Son of a Trickster, again, there was no Sasquatch, which was his big disappointment. The main character's name is Jared, and he's 16, and he's living in Kitimat, and he's got a pretty rough life. And then the magic starts coming in, and it gets even crazier. So I was gonna. So this is the sequel, Trickster Drift. He's been sober for a year, and he's moving down to Vancouver to upgrade to get into a BCIT program. I think I'm echoing. I have two microphones, and they're talking to each other. Hello. So I would like to, then I realized I don't know how comfortable I am with swearing in front of.
We had parents on.
Are you all comfortable with swearing? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. When I did the launch for Son of a Trickster, the very first page of Son of a Trickster has fucking first page. So if you could make it past that, it doesn't get much better. When I do school visits, I have to read the 4 pages where there's no swearing. I think there's about 25 pages in here where there's not swearing. Well, the first one was like 300 pages. So there's, a couple of, they're just little F-bombs. They're not all creative. But Jared's mom is an enthusiastic swearer, so she has some very choice words. So this is the opening of Trickster Drift. The clouds finally broke into a sullen drizzle after a muggy, overcast day. Jared flipped up his hood as he turned the corner onto the street. His mom's truck was in the driveway. The house he'd grown up in was 2 stories high, white with green trim. The large porch was littered with work gear. His mom rented out 2 of the rooms and the basement to pay the bills. Most of her tenants were subcontractors in Kitimat for a few weeks and unwilling to shell out for a pricey furnished 1-bedroom or a motel room. Or they were hardcore smokers who wanted to be able to light up in their rooms and found a kindred spirit in his mom, a dedicated 2-packer who hated being forced outside. He paused on the sidewalk listening. Things seemed quiet, which didn't mean it was safe to go in, but Jared went up the steps and opened the front door. Not visiting his mom before he took off for Vancouver would save him a lot of grief, but it would be such a douche move. She'd never let him forget it. "Mom? In here," she said, her voice coming from the kitchen. The kitchen windows were all open and moths fluttered against the screens. She was frying a pan of meatballs, her cigarette tucked into the corner of her mouth. Her hair was in a ponytail. She wore her favorite ripped Metallica t-shirt over jeans and flip-flops. He could see all the muscles working in her face as she inhaled. She was losing weight again. He hoped it was just Coke. Jared put his backpack down by the table and hopped up to sit on the counter. His mom salted a pot of boiling water and cracked in spaghetti. "Nice of you to show up," she said. Jared swung his feet, staring at them. "Where's Richie?" "He is where he is." Her boyfriend sold the lighter recreational drugs. They used to get along, but Richie seemed suspicious of Jared now that Jared was sober, like he'd suddenly turned into a narc. When they were forced together by his mom, Richie wouldn't talk to him for fear of incriminating himself. Jared watched her resentfully making him dinner. She hated cooking. He wished she just ordered a pizza. He tried to think of a safe topic of conversation. His Monday night shift at Dairy Queen was normally dull, but his new coworker had kept stopping to sob into her headset. Work was nuts. I had to train my replacement. She does not handle stress well. Not many people survive the soft serve ice cream racket. Ballbuster, his mom called her when he was being charitable. His adoptive dad, his dad, Philip Martin, the guy who'd raised him when his biological father had turned out to be a complete dick. She stirred the pasta. "What? No snappy comeback?" "I'm tired." "Yeah, looking down on all us alkies and addicts must be exhausting. Are we going to do this all night?" "Get the colander." Jared hopped down and grabbed the colander from the cupboard above the fridge. When he handed it to her, she stared at him a moment. Then her lips went thin, the lines around her mouth deepening. "I don't want you staying with Death Rat." Death Rat was the nickname of one of her exes, Charles Redhill, a low-level pot grower who'd said it would be okay if Jared bunked in his basement while he was going to school in Vancouver, if he didn't mind working a little security detail in exchange. People aren't exactly lining up to let me sleep on their couches. He's a fuckboy with delusions, he's Brando. "Stella!" Jared said, trying to make her laugh. She ignored him as if he wasn't standing beside her. She took the cigarette out of the corner of her mouth and let the pasta drain and the colander in the sink, then dumped it back into the pot. She poured a jar of ragu spaghetti sauce and stirred. This is basically my cooking. And then added meatballs. She crushed the last bit of her cigarette out in the burner and tossed the butt into a sand-filled coffee can near the sink. He carried the pot to the table. She pulled some garlic bread out of the oven. They ate in silence, or more accurately, Jared ate in silence. His mom smoked and picked at a meatball with her fork, slowly mashing it into bits. "Where's Death Threat's place?" Jared shrugged. He was hoping against hope that Death lived near his school, the British Columbia Institute of Technology. Didn't matter, though. Nothing beat free. "Nice. I'm your mother, and you don't even trust me enough to know where you're fucking staying." "He's away in Washington State right now. I'm booked at a hostel for the first week. Just text my cell. Told you where he lives, right?" He'll show. He's a fucking pothead. He'll forget you exist. He forgets where his ass is until someone hands it to him. "I can handle myself." His mom sucked in a great impatient breath. "Can we just have a nice supper?" Jared said. "Can you not live with a spazzy fucktard who calls himself Death Rat?" "Chill. I just need a free place to stay until my student loan comes through. Then I'll find a room or something." Fucking Jesus on goddamn crutches. "Mom, don't mom me, genius. This is a crap plan. It's my life." "Jared, you can barely manage warding. What are you going to do if you run into something really fucking dangerous?" His mom was a witch, for real, as he had found out definitely just before he swore off the booze and drugs. He'd always thought she was being melodramatic when she told him witch stuff. Then he was kidnapped by some angry otters, and his shape-shifting father/sperm donor stepped in to save him, along with his mother. He only lost a toe. Her particular talent was hexes, though she preferred giving her enemies a good old-fashioned shit-kicking. Curses tended to bite you in the ass, she told him, and weren't nearly as satisfying as physically throttling someone. Who's gonna bother me, Jared said. I got nothing anyone wants. You're the son of a trickster. There's 1 billion of us! On one website, he found 532 people claiming to be the children of Wiegert. Either Wiegert couldn't keep it in his pants, or a lot of people wanted to appear more exotic. You think you're so fucking smart, his mom said. Jared recited the serenity prayer in his head. She took another cigarette out of the pack and lit it off her butt before crushing it into the full ashtray in the middle of the table. The TV went on in the living room. The recliner squealed. I'll be out of your hair tomorrow, Jared said. You can forget you ever had me and party yourself to death. You are testing my patience. It was always a bad sign when his mom stopped swearing. Jared focused on the tick of the kitchen clock to stay calm. You don't think I love you, is that it? I don't think I'm high on your priority list. She got up and stood over him. She took her cigarette out of her mouth, and he half expected it to get it in his face. He must have flinched because her eyes narrowed dangerously. She grabbed his chin. You should have been a girl. Wah, Mommy doesn't fucking love me. My feelings. He shoved her hand away. Get off me. Are we done emoting? I am. She backed up a step. So I asked my sister if you could stay with her. Holy crap. Jared was stunned. His mom hadn't spoken to his sister since forever. God, she really didn't want him to stay with Death Threat. I don't know, Jared said. Maeve's willing to put you up, but be careful. She's deaf to magic. Don't bring it up around her. She'll think you're nuts and try to get you on antipsychotics. I thought you hated her. I do. She took a piece of paper out of her jean jacket pocket and handed it to him. His throat tightened when he saw the name and number. His Aunt Mavis Moody had tried to get custody of him when he was a baby, figuring his sister would be bad for him. His mom had married Philip Martin to avoid losing Jared. He couldn't meet his mom's eyes, knowing how much of her pride she'd sacrificed to find him a safer place to crash. He dropped his head. Don't say I never did anything for you, she said. Jared reached down, rifled through his backpack, and gave her his grad picture. She frowned. Are you throwing it in my face? I only have grade 8 and you're a fucking high school graduate. You think that makes you special? It's just a picture, Jared said. Toss it if you don't like it. And I think you're a little too young for the rest of the chapter. So.
But you can buy a copy.
So I'm skipping over to read a bit of, I have what I call the hippie science sections. This is chapter 30. Bleh. When furry aquatic rodents ruled Turtle Island. Once upon a time, the continent of North America glittered like a disco ball. Large ponds, small ponds, mega ponds as large as Lake shone like a million tiny mirrors in the sunlight as the world spun. The ponds were created by over 100 million beavers who toiled to build dams, to build their dens, and to raise their children to transform the landscape as their ancestors had before them. But then, in much the same way a butterfly flapping its wings in China can cause a tornado in Texas, a fad for furry hats in Europe caused the near extinction of beavers in North America. From 1550 to 1850, felt hats made from beaver fur were valuable status symbols that told the wearer's story of wealth, rank, and privilege to the casual viewing eye, much the same way a luxury car does these days. First, beavers were hunted to extinction in most of Europe. When the fur traders arrived in North America, the great hunt continued here. Today, beavers have rebounded from near oblivion to 10 million strong. Other fur bearers, like otters, generally loathe humans for the genocide they perpetrated and will take human form to lure the unsuspecting to their death. Though beavers have the ability to transform, they have no interest in shape-shifting to exact guerrilla retribution. Ordinary beavers, like this young couple who are putting the finishing touches on their food cache at the bottom of the new pond on the outskirts of an urban park, work long into the night even as they await their first litter. The creator bid us build, so we build, the male beaver says. Don't encourage the damn trickster, the female beaver says. Just ignore him until he goes away. The male waddles up the shore, dark eyes glittering in the moonlight. The female ducks behind him, protectively smoothing the fur over her belly. Her name is Water Lily, he says, and I'm Aspen. Shut it, you ass, Water Lily says. He's narrating our lives. You might as well get our names right. You, trickster, piss off, you troublemaker. Can't you see we're working here? Clueless human lover. Hormones, Aspen says. How do they forgive? How do they continue to live as if nothing happened after so much wrong has been done to them? How are they not consumed by hate like everyone else? Are you mocking us? Water Lily says. I think he's drunk. Aspen stands up on his hind legs. Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you to go, buddy. Such strength, so noble, the noble beaver. I'm this close to slapping you, Aspen says, raising his tail. Something dropped. Okay, I'll just put that here. Okay, and I will stop there and
We got time for questions. I've got some questions, but I hope you formulate some questions as well. So
okay.
I'll leave you standing up.
Okay.
We've got a lot of young writers, young students here. Tell us a little bit about your early years. What were your favorite authors and influences, and how did you decide? How did you know that you wanted to be a writer?
I didn't for a long time. I was an avid reader. My parents were avid readers. I loved horror. From, let's see, age 10 to 16, I think I read everything Stephen King ever wrote. Clive Barker, Eric McCormick. If it was dark and creepy, I read it. And as I grew older, that stayed, but I became more interested in other writing.
Tell us about your experiences as an undergraduate writing student at UVic, the highs and the lows. And then are there any tips you can give writing students on making the most of their time at university?
Well, I actually flunked fiction. I'm looking back on the things I wrote back then. I see why. Well, to move into the next level of fiction, you had to get a B+, and I was averaging C's. So I went into the poetry stream, and I was a poet on Scalpin. But there was a summer course with Bill Valgerson, and I snuck into that. Re-entered the fiction stream, so it was, I decided that if I really wanted to write fiction, then I should just put my nose to the grindstone. So I would write any time that I wasn't working or in class or finishing off projects. So at that point, oh my God, it was so long ago. Home computers were really rare. So there was a computer lab up here. So I would flirt with the computer guys. Because you were only supposed to be on the computer for 2 hours. But if you played tank with them, you could stay on as long as you wanted. I don't know if that helps you. Pretty sure I'm not supposed to suggest that, but yeah, that was, yeah.
Let's talk about that. I think that discipline is so important as a writer. A lot of writers, myself included, struggle after they leave school, after you have these enforced deadlines, after you have this kind of community of peers. I mean, how did you survive and then ultimately thrive as a writer after you graduated UVic and then UBC? just
Oh,
have
I
to make it on.
loathed my day job, just with fiery passion.
What was your day job?
I was a clerk at it used to be called the Unemployment Office on Quebec Street in Vancouver. And I was on phones the day they switched the legislation so that if you were fired, you wouldn't collect UIM. After you've had like people screaming at you all day, it's nice to go home and write. So writing was an escape from a job I just really hated. And I don't know if that helps you either. Go get a job that you hate. And you'll use writing as an escape.
But tell us a bit more about Jared. He's such a fascinating character, I guess a central character in the Trickster novels. I mean, where does he come from? I mean, how do you actually write a character who's got all of these different levels? It can be mundane to the mythical, it can be frustrating, it can be so endearing.
Well, I started off writing. My dad was telling trickster stories to my niece and nephew, and they didn't get why they were funny. Like the context had been removed from their lives. I thought that was really sad. So I was trying to write a trickster story that they would find funny. The first bits that I wrote were from immediate voice, but it's kind of like writing a story from Sherlock Holmes' point of view. It comes off a bit braggy. So I realized that I had the wrong narrator and that I needed a Watson. So at first it was Maggie, and then it was a few other people. But I was also writing a collection of short stories then where it was set in East Vancouver, and it was about an intertribal dance group, a traditional intertribal dance group that forms and then falls apart. And I had been in a couple where the politics that brought you together ended up fracturing you. And I thought it would be a really good short story collection that would be interconnected. And one of those stories, I had a young man coming down from northern BC on the Greyhound. And I never finished it. It was one of those stories that dies. So it was 8 really powerful pages, and then it just wouldn't go anywhere. But that scene had always haunted me, where he came into the Vancouver bus depot late in the evening. So that's how Jared came about. So I wrote the Trickster series, starting with the second book. And then there was so much backstory, we turned it into a first book. And then the first book I wrote became the second book.
Well, it kind of leads into one more question. Tell us about your writing, and I think especially the revision process.
Mm-hmm.
The revision process is, I think, so different for every writer, and yet so important and so hard to teach.
Yes.
To learn. What does it look like for you?
I have a dear friend who uses the Nabokov method. You write one sentence on one note card, and then you rewrite it until it's perfect. And then you write that sentence on a clean note card and hole punch the corner, and put it onto like one of those rings. And then you move on to the next sentence. I call his method the anal method. And he calls mine the vomit method. Because I don't censor, I don't, for an hour each morning, I just pour it all out, and it comes out not in order, not in any shape, it leaps around, characters change wildly. And then once I have a good chunk that I'll call like the draft, then I'll go through it and find the threads and pull them out and see how they work together. That's my favorite part. First drafts are the scariest part for me because you have nothing. It's the blank page syndrome. So I have to play a lot of games when I'm first starting a novel to make it less scary. Like I'll do timed writings where I say I'll only work for 15 minutes and then set the timer. And usually what happens is that you find something interesting and then you just keep writing, and it, eventually I hit an hour. But my absolute favorite part is playing with the material. Like once you have the clay and you can shape it and refine it, and if it doesn't work, you just pull it apart again and keep. And that's when I lose the damage deposit for my apartments, because they start pinning things up and scribbling wildly, and the ink goes on the wall, and there's notes all over the floor, and once I have a structure that I like, then I start to go through and look for the holes, like the places where the logic doesn't quite work, or the places that need more research. The moments in the character interactions that I just put in as placeholders, because when I'm writing, I like to avoid conflict. I'm from a small community, and that's just not how we deal with things. So I do the same thing in my writing. The first drafts are always, fairly conflict-free, so it makes the interactions kind of very low key. So when I go through for this draft, once the shape is there and I go through and start filling in and fleshing out, I go through the places that I avoided the arguments. Like the fight between Jared and his mom, I didn't write until much later. And there's a scene in Son of a Trickster where one of Jared's favorite characters is his Nana Sophia. She's been an absolute rock in his life. She's always supportive. She doesn't tell him what to do. She's just, they have a wonderful relationship. And then at the end of the novel, I'm also a horrible spoiler, so I don't know if you want to be surprised. Too late. She discovers that they're not blood relatives, that completely changes their relationship. And that scene I just avoided and avoided and avoided and avoided until very late in the editing process with Anne Collins, my editor. And then she said, "Well, you've got to hit this scene because it's carrying a lot of stakes." So I'm a method writer. When my characters are sad, I cry. So I had just finished writing the scene. And my dad lived 2 blocks away, so he would walk over for coffee and pie, and he came in and was just crying. He thought someone had died. That is Sophia. It was really upset until he realized it was just my character. And he had that look. I think you need help. And then as Sophia, spoiler, comes. Yeah, I'm horrible to watch Game of Thrones with. Like if I've watched an episode before you. I've had people block me on Facebook until they've seen the episode. Guess what Cersei did? Boom! Spoiler. You haven't seen that season. And yeah, the same way with books. If I've read it and you haven't, it's like, oh, well, guess what happened in.
Do you know what happens in your trilogy?
Yes. Yes.
Take some questions from the floor. Questions for you. At the back, nice and loud.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you said before a couple minutes ago, you read like the first 8 pages and then it kind of dies.
Yes.
So how would you see like most things that you read just suddenly die after like 8 strong pages? Why do you think that happens? Or is that just like, you lose interest?
I've written 100 pages into a novel and then it's died. and that is painful. And sometimes it's that I don't have the skill set to write that story just yet. Sometimes I'm not able to process the emotions myself, so I need a little maturing. And sometimes the idea just hasn't baked enough in the back of my head. So I have all these little story fragments that, someday they might go somewhere. And I call it my X file. So I've got hundreds of little bits, and it's incredibly frustrating. I have an obsessive need to finish things. So towards the end of any manuscript, I have this manic look. And when I still smoked, I would go from my regular 2 packs to about 5. It was so frustrating not to be able to finish it that day. So to have a story stop dead and not be in control of that, I'll usually hammer my head against it for a few weeks and then go, okay, let's put this one in the X file for a while. Okay, I saw, yes.
I was just wondering, this is more specific to like some of Trickster, but in the book we have a lot of really complex characters, like even if Jared doesn't completely acknowledge how complex they are, you can really tell the whole backstory to
Yes.
them. And I was wondering, how do you like limit yourself to having a specific amount, or how do you develop all of those without having it take over the entire book?
That is a challenge that my first readers and my editors helped me with. For this book, I've been working with Anne Collins, and she likes the great characters as much as I do. I'm not too fond of a character being all good or all bad. I love the different facets that people show. I think it's fascinating. And it's the more characterization you put into a novel, the slower it goes. So I balance that off with an excessive amount of dialogue. I find they work well together. When there's too much characterization, there's usually, that's when the narrative threads start to sag. And then I grew up with a very large family. My mother has 16 brothers and sisters, and my dad has 13. So I'm used to holding a large number of aunties, uncles, grands, cousins, second cousins, sort of cousins, people we've adopted, So with Mike Beach, for instance, there were the character nicknames, there were the high-five nicknames, the baby names, the endearments. So each character would have like 6 or 7 different names, and that was just. So my editor for that book, we're getting into Russian novel territory. So I had to condense a lot of the characters and take out like a lot of the names and nicknames, and mostly it depends on the pacing of the novel, the pacing of that section, and how crucial those characters are to the narrative thread. Some of the characters in Trickster Drift, we pulled back on their backstories because it was such a clump of just so many different things happening. You had to pick and choose what would most effectively tell the story, and then let the other threads go. And that part, I have a little burning thing going. And then I put the extra bits in the X file. I found the X file helpful for letting things go, because it's gone, but it's not really gone. You still might use it someday.
Yeah, that. Anyone?
Hi, thank you for coming in. I'm wondering what your approach is when you're in the editing stage of, for example, a novel. How do
for me, that is where insane, sort of clipped things start. Like I'll print out the entire book and then clip it into scenes, and then summarize the scene on a note card, and put the note card running along the top. And so, if you start duplicating the kinds of scenes that are happening, when you use that method, you can see what what you've hit and what you haven't hit. And sometimes you can love a scene, but it just, the purpose for it died a couple of drafts back. And your darlings are, there was one scene in Monkey Beach that I just adored, but none of the editors liked it. It was a very traditional story set in my home territory, my dad's home territory, with ghosts and books, and I had a little story about these hunters meeting a shapeshifter, and he morphed into an alien and demanded to be taken to Elvis. So that when the hunters told the story, no one would believe them. And I just loved that story. But, in hindsight, it was, not crucial to the narrative. So it took like several chats with my editors to convince me that was not, a crucial piece. So when I pulled that, in hindsight, I'm glad some of those bits are, so it helps when you have other people reading your material, but it's really important not to bring them in too early. Like if you're not ready to share, sometimes it can crush a story. But if you don't bring anyone in, then you end up with all those weird little bits or weird structures. Sometimes an outside eye is really good. It also depends on what you're writing. Like if it's a novella or a novel or a giant novel, there's a lot of different ways to tackle restructuring. Hi.
Hi. You mentioned that, a novel, if the idea isn't working very well, it dies after a few pages.
Mm-hmm.
X-Files. You mentioned that it's an indicator that you haven't developed a skill set right now to take the story. But over the course of your writing career, how can you tell if you've developed certain skills that you didn't have before? Like, how can you track the progress of growth as a writer?
When you look at the earlier stories that you loved and go, oh my God, whoa, that really sucks. For instance, I wrote a novella called Contact Sports, and then I wrote a book, a sequel to it called Blood Sports, and that was one of the books that died 100 pages in, called Death Sports. And I think it requires like almost all of my fiction is we're riding around in one person's head or just on their shoulder. Like I have a singular narrator, and I haven't really worked with multiple narrators. So I think that book needs multiple narrators, and that's a skill that I just don't have yet. I would also like to write a trashy band council romance. And that requires multiple narrators. So one of the ways that I'm dealing with that is reading a lot of books that have multiple narrators and trying to steal the skills that, the little bits that they use to help the reader know which person is speaking when. Because I tend to like the power of a single narrator. But some stories can't be told from just one person's head. They demand more voices to fill like a more of a community story. So I think the trashy band council romance needs definitely needs multiple narrators. I had finished my bachelor's program, I couldn't imagine another 2 or 3 years of school. And I really wasn't planning on going for a bachelor's so quickly. I was going to take a year off and work some of my debt away. But then I won a fiction contest through Prism, and I went to the awards ceremony and met the graduate students who were running Prism, and it was so much fun. And I really wanted to work with them and do workshops with them. And it was a matter of circumstance. And what I got out here during my bachelor's, the learning curve was really steep. Because I went from being an avid reader to having an inkling of what it was like to write. Whereas my master's program, I tackled a novella, and then I started writing Monkey Beach. And because, the novella took about 10 years to write, and it didn't come together until I went to my master's program, because I didn't have the skill set to finish something to take that long of a breath. So working, what really helped was, just the workshop format, where you get to see other people who are struggling through the same things that you are, but you have no emotional attachment to their manuscript, so you can see where they're working and where they aren't working, and through the process, you learn how to articulate what you think. And through the editorial process in the Prism editorial board, I had to argue for the stories that I wrote. And I was very fortunate to have some classmates who had opposing views. So a lot of them turned into, fiction shouting matches. But it really, it gave me a sense of what my own aesthetic was, and I never knew that I had one. So the master's program for me was an incubator for novels, whereas the bachelor's program, convinced me that there was craft in writing. And it would be very handy to learn it. And I think you can write without writing programs, but it just condenses your learning period into into a much shorter period. And I was very lucky that I had the time and resources to do it.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. Anything from community school?
What are maybe some of your favorite exercises for a young, new beginner writer that you could maybe recommend to your writers?
Oh, well, I love doing group character creation exercises. So, let's see. I feel like I could backpack. Okay, so we're gonna, yes, this is my, we're gonna start with a character. Would you guys like to make this character male or female?
Female.
Okay, I heard like one more female word. Okay. How old is this character?
14. 16.
Okay, so I heard 4 more 16s than I heard like 8, 81, 32, 28. So we have a 16-year-old girl. How tall is she?
5'4".
Wow. What color is her hair?
Red.
Red. Okay. Short, long?
Long.
Okay, I'm just making it. dress was like.
Spiders. Emo.
Emo. Okay, I don't know how to draw emo. Dark. Okay. Does our character? Yeah. That's the reason I was writing. Does she have any siblings?
3, 4. Who's got one?
No. Okay, I've heard 5. More times than the others. Okay, so she has 5 siblings. Does she live with her parents?
No.
No. Okay, if she doesn't live with her parents, who does she live with?
Her aunt.
Her auntie.
Her grandma.
Grandma.
She splits her time between her auntie and her grandma. When she's mad at one, she stomps off to the other. Oh my goodness. Let's see. She has 5 siblings. Is she the oldest, the middle, or the youngest?
Middle.
I've heard very enthusiastic middles. Okay, so she no. So eventually we name her, and then we add either siblings or we explore the auntie or the grandma. We have a place for them, but we do it together, and then we do some writing exercises based on the characters. Like, she decides to leave home and join a band, and then you guys take it from there. Or she decides to go to a logging camp. I don't know, what would you do if you were like super emo these days? Nothing. She runs away to do nothing. You be creative, do a couple of characters, and then set some parameters and just do some writing from there. That one's a lot of fun. I think we're running out of time. Those are awesome.